Hey everybody, it's Talia here at Lots of Stories. We are in between seasons of the show. Everything about production has changed in the past few months, as it has in the entire world. But I thought it would be a good time to bring the show back and get a chance to check in and tell some stories. Some of them, like last season, are going to be improv stories that I just make up on the spot. And some of them are going to be things I've written that I'll read to you that are in different states of completion, some probably not really completed at all. But I thought it would be nice to just check in with you and to share what I've been up to. Now, as you know from season 1, we would most of the time meet in the studio at M&N. And I would have guests on pretty much every episode aside from the last couple. We do have the technology on Zoom to do a joint show, but to be honest, I've been spending a lot of time in isolation. I know a lot of other people have too. And I just thought it might be nice to see what I can create by myself, just to feel okay about that. I think isolation can be really hard, and sometimes it's nice to remind ourselves of what we can do alone. So as I've been between seasons of Lots of Stories, I've also been doing a lot of writing, some long form pieces, some short form pieces, things for different purposes, and mostly, to be honest, for me, to help me get through this time. I think it's been a difficult time for everyone, of course, some people more than others. And what helps me is to think about stories and words and rhymes and writing in general. So that's what I've been up to for a lot of this time. Now, one of the pieces that I've written was for a Jewish holiday, Shavuot, which happened at the end of May, and it's the holiday on which we read the Book of Ruth. So I thought I would take a look at that book in the Bible and put myself into the character's shoes and see how I would feel if I was going through what it seems like they were going through. A retelling. Two women of different generations. Both are going through losses of love and of home. They talk about what their next steps will be, how they will survive, and how they will get through this time. The older woman, Naomi, thinks about the last time she was in this place, the last time she had to figure out where to go to survive. She tells the story again, how she got here. She was from another land, from Judah. At a time of famine, she, her husband, and her 2 sons said goodbye to their homeland. They looked for sustenance and found it in this place, in Moab. They found a new home here, the 4 of them, and 4 became 6 as Naomi's sons married women of this place. And 6 became 5 when Naomi's husband perished, and 5 became 3 when her sons perished too. The 3 women, widowed, looked for sustenance and home, for survival and belonging. Naomi led them back on the road to Judah, to her former home. She gave directions, and they helped her keep her strength. But on the way, she second-guessed. This would be a homecoming for her, but how would her daughters fit in? It had never been their home. Naomi said, "Please, return to the homes of your mothers. Maybe I think of you as daughters, but maybe the people of my old home will not. I cannot imagine a home for you if a husband is not part of it, and I have no more sons to give you." 3 became 2, as one returned to Moab. 2 women of different generations remain together. Both are going through losses of love and of home. One leaving the home where she rebuilt her life, the other leaving the only home she knew. The younger woman, Ruth, thinks about the new land she is entering. She thinks about whether she will be able to find a new home there. She thinks about the home she had built with her husband. the home that she has in her relationship with Naomi. Naomi says, go. In her grief, she can only think of being one. Ruth says, no, do not ask me to leave you. Wherever you go, I will go. Wherever you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people. Your God will be my God. They take each other's hands. They hold back tears. They journey on. On the way, Naomi says, we have a rule in this land. I don't know if it applies to us, to you. If someone comes to live with our people, someone from another people, another land, if they live in our midst as part of our community, we welcome them. We call it welcoming the stranger. It is not properly named, though. It means that someone who was once foreign becomes family. As she says family, she touches Ruth's hand. Ruth grips Naomi's hand, and they walk on. They journey on. Naomi says, we have another rule in this land. If anyone is hungry, anyone in need, especially widows without their husbands or orphans without their fathers, they may glean wheat at the corners of the fields. And perhaps we can find lodging nearby until we get settled. Ruth says, I'm ready to glean. She wonders, are there any paths forward for women or children that do not rely on men? They return to Naomi's homeland of old. They find the kinsman's land. Ruth gleans in the field behind those who reap for the kinsman. She observes, the reaping is a bountiful harvest. It leads to great wealth. The gleaning gives us enough to survive until we can find a way to our own bounty. The kinsman returns to take stock of his bounty and workers. He notices Ruth and asks about her. He likes her. The kinsman acts like this God she has heard about. She has accepted as her own. A tremendous man who bestows her with rewards of water and grain for her loyalty to Naomi. Naomi advises Ruth to make herself available to the kinsman. She does, and she is looked after. Ruth appreciates the kindness of the kinsman and wonders at what cost, and wonders why it is only for her. It gives her comfort to know she will have a bed, a secure home, and supply of food, that she can share these with Naomi, and that she may be able to consider the possibility of romantic love. But outside the hut, she sees that there are others who still glean in the fields, and she wonders if they don't manage to marry into this comfort, what will life look like for them? The gleaning was hard for her, and that was just a day or two. There are other women who need support. There are other children. There are people without men to care for them. There are people who want to be able to care for themselves without depending on the kindness of a man. She agreed a society should look out for all those in need. But why are there so many in need? Is there another way to organize ourselves to reduce the need, to provide one another with our own patches of land, our own opportunities for bounty? Ruth is said to become the great-grandmother of the future King David, her son with the kinsman, David's grandfather. Ruth, who wondered about a shared society, a society that provides for women without men by having them glean wheat at the edges, who wondered whether they can have fields of their own, who finds the only way she can have her own field is through marriage. Ruth is said to be the matriarch of the monarch who builds great wealth and war and creates a widow he can marry, who takes people and creates pain. The monarch who also creates words and music of pain and of praise. And we are left to celebrate their memories. And on Shavuot, we have many reasons to celebrate. We celebrate liberation. We celebrate being able to receive wisdom and being able to enter into new lands and build new lives. And we celebrate Ruth and Naomi. So that's a piece that I wrote for Shavuot that I shared at my synagogue. And I thought I'd share it with you. I've been writing a bunch of other things in this time, and so I thought I'd read you some of them, and maybe I'll work up the energy for an improv story, but I don't have any great suggestions. So For now, I'm going to read a little bit more, and then we'll see. Next, I'm going to read you a piece that I also wrote a little while ago, over the past month or so, and it's not finished, and I'm not exactly sure what edits I'm going to make still, but I enjoy it, and I hope you'll enjoy it too, so I'm just going to read it. Sweet corn. I need the sweet corn. It's near the end of summer, and I've been waiting all year, for this, my favorite time of year. The time we go to pick your own, when we get lost in ears of corn, and then we drift off all alone, atop the blue-tinged valley. We also came here back in June, before the rising of the moon, knelt in the dirt for strawberries, in quiet we loved each other very. I've also been here in the fall, picked cabbages, apples, greens and all, and smelled the air and dirt and wind, and knew that you and I were kin. We talked of living on a farm and leave the city before arms were strongly reaching in the air and knees buried in asphalt. We can't leave now, we love it so. The hope of struggle and the growth. The city might just open up, and you and I, we will be safe. Safe and free, that's all we want, when we're at home or on a jaunt, and we'll hold hands while on the couch or walking eastward to the park. That park is where we really met, where our bodies and souls stretched on the white and blue picnic blanket, and then our toes stretched in the grass. I hope one day we'll be right there, out in the open, green, fresh air, and we can pick our own or lay ourselves in the sweet grass. Oh yes, summer is almost here. My birthday, farms, caves, lake, and beach. And you will bring along with you your red inflatable kayak. A kayak's only built for one, but we'll take turns out in the sun. You'll watch our things and I will row, and then we'll switch and you will go. I miss you so, I miss you so. I'm sick of saying, please let's go. Away from separate lives and such. Let us return, I miss you much. But now the city needs us more than farms or dreams of grasses, shores, and other places to escape the hot asphalt of summer. We both have dreams separately, of buildings, plays, and movie screens, and independence, strength, and might that could get lost in sheer delight, of rows of corn and strawberries, and moons and flowers, nature dreams. And won't you please come back to me when all of this is over? We are both strong, and we'll get through, and we'll have built our worlds anew, and reunite with so much more we ever thought we'd be before. So that's a piece I wrote kind of recently, and it actually made me think of a piece that I wrote a little over a year ago. So I'm going to read that too. There's an ambulance, so I'm going to start again. There's an ambulance, so I'm going to start again. But I just want to say how a couple months ago, there were so many ambulances. And now there are fewer. There were so many sirens, and now there are fewer. And each time I hear a siren, as upsetting as it is to think about who needs it, I'm so glad that there are fewer of them. So now when I have to start and stop and start again, I'm weirdly relieved, even though I wish that person didn't need it. I'm so glad it's not as many people. Okay, so this is the piece that I wrote a little over a year ago. We were something before this. We were something before. Before these wars, before these scars, before we had to define ourselves as separate from them and them and them and them. Before we had to protect ourselves, before we were scared of each other, We were something before. Before, we saw the vastness of the ocean. We felt the heights of the skies, as if they were inside us and were too big to ever be. We felt sand in our toes, or maybe grass, and sometimes rocks. And even the sun, that sun between our toes, right in our souls, warming our shoulders. We felt it all. Before, that big fat moon, made of milk or pearls or light, gave us hope when it waned and weaned. It let us yearn, it let us dream, it let us sit with our pain. Didn't rush us, but it pulled us along with its own rhythms. It was surrounded by stars that we couldn't always see, and they filled the sky like people filled the earth, and they each had room and space to shine. And we dreamed that we would too. We felt it all. Oh, and that air, that magnificent air. We felt her too, cooing and curling around us. She'd cool us down and lift up our hair. She loved us because she was the space between the stars and between us, and she gave us room to breathe. Oh, and we breathed. We felt it all. This was before. It can be again. I actually wrote that as what I would call a proto song. I guess that means before a song. There's a musical that I had been trying to write around this time last year. I actually put it aside because I felt I needed to gain some skill and some stamina. So I've been working on another play. And I'm actually getting close to the end of draft 2, which is very exciting. But the one that I was working on that helped me get to that piece that I just read, that one is still with me, and I can't wait till the day when I have enough ability, skill, perseverance, and knowledge, and just the ability to write the way I feel this thing should be. And then maybe, who knows, maybe that piece will turn into a song that goes into that musical. So we shall see. So like I said, all the things that I'm reading today are kind of in various stages of being done or not done. Or maybe nothing's ever really done and it always evolves. I don't know. And that's actually how I feel about this episode today, because I have a plan for what I want to do for season 2 of this show. Well, I had an original plan before isolation, and that had to change. And then I got a new plan. And I'm excited about it, but I haven't been quite ready to put it into production yet. It requires a couple of set changes around my house, and just a little more thought, and a little more camera setup and the like. So I plan to get to it. But in the meantime, I wanted to put some new episodes on MN because it had been a while and I've been rerunning old episodes for a while. So I thought I'd share some new content. I hope it's not too boring that it's just me reading. I loved having guests. But as much as I love Zoom and Zoom classes and meetings and all that have been getting me through this isolation time, I also find, well, in rewatching the first season, I realized that actually my favorite thing about the show ended up being me and another person looking at each other. So when I was watching it back and editing, I just kind of loved seeing us looking at each other with attention and caring. And it was like the eye contact was its own thing to watch, I felt. And with Zoom, it's just not possible because our eyes are darting all around. We don't know what to look at or who or how. And I just felt for right now, that wasn't exactly what I wanted to produce. So I'm very down with all of these amazing creative people out there doing that. And in fact, this play that I'm working on, we're about to do a Zoom reading in a month or so. Which I'm really excited about, and it'll be great to see. But for this humble little show lots of stories and it's in between episodes, playing with format a little bit. I just kind of felt like what I've loved about it is the intimacy between two people that you can see when they're sitting there. And unfortunately now that's not really possible. But I can talk to you, and I hope that that is somehow meaningful, somehow brightens your day or lifts you up, or just, you know, is something that you enjoy or helps you get through the time. So, all right, I've told you a little bit about that, and now I think I'm going to read you some more stuff. Or I could make up a story. I need a suggestion. I have nothing. Do I have nothing? Okay, I'm going to make up a story. Okay, I'm going to make up a story. I am going to look around the room I'm sitting in right now for some inspiration. And things that I find inspiring include blue mountains, orange water, and a pencil. Okay, so those are my suggestions to myself. And here's what the story will be. One day, there is a young female person who's probably around the age of 12, 13, 14, something like that. And she lived with her parents and with her 5 siblings and her 2 dogs and her 3 cats and her 2 bunnies and her 1 guinea pig and her 4 goldfish. And she went into her backyard because there was a lot of noise in her house and she was tired and she needed a moment of quiet. So she thought if she went into her backyard, maybe she'd get a little moment of quiet. So she packed with her a pencil and a notebook, because when you have some quiet, it's always good to have a journal, because you never know what brilliant ideas you're going to get and need to write down so that you don't forget them. And especially when you are a person in need of quiet, it can be so hard to keep all the thoughts that are bobbing and whipping around your head, to keep them straight or to get a sense of who you really are. So sometimes you need to write down a whole lot just to hear yourself again. So she put her journal and her pencil into her back pocket and she went to her backyard. Now she had a humble sized backyard. They lived in a city, not in like a downtown area, so they had a little outdoor space, but it wasn't huge. There was a fence around it and it was nice. There were a couple trees and some grass and like a little patch of dirt. And she decided to sit down by the little patch of dirt, still in the grass because that's cozier, but by the little patch of dirt. And before she sat down, she took out the journal and the pencil because it's not that comfortable to sit on that. She didn't want the pencil to stick her in the butt, let's be honest. And so she avoided that. So she's sitting down on the grass next to this little patch of dirt, and there's a little twig that fell down from the tree whose branches are, reaching above her. And she holds the twig in one hand and the pencil in the other hand. And she just looks at them for a minute. Thinks it's pretty amazing that a pencil usually is made out of wood, just like this little twig. And I bet I could probably make pencils of my own one day if I, got the right kind of drill and the right drill bit and did it softly enough and had the right lead and all of that. That's a great idea. Maybe I should try making my own pencils. And so she opened up her journal and write down, make your own pencils in there, because that was a good idea. And she wanted to return to it and not forget. But she still needed some more quiet and space out time. So she, put her hands behind her palms on the ground and leaned back just to relax a little bit and really sink into the ground. And she looked at the little patch of dirt next to her, and she took her twig and started playing in the dirt, making little swirls or designs, spirals, maybe her initials. And she started digging, and she heard the sound of a little droplet of water. And this was confusing. She heard droplets of water coming from below. So she started digging a little more. And she heard what sounded like a rushing river. And she started digging a little bit more, and she heard the boom of an ocean, the wind on an ocean. And she just couldn't believe what was happening. She couldn't have dug more than 2 inches. And these were the sounds she was hearing. And she said, I kind of need to know what's down there. And so she took her index finger that was holding the twig before, but now it really needed to get involved. And she put her index finger down in the hole. And it felt, at first, like moist dirt. And then it felt like her finger was taking a bath. And then it felt like her whole hand was starting to slide in, and her arm and her shoulder. And with her other hand, she grabbed onto the notebook and the pencil, and it didn't make sense because, of course, paper will get wet in water, soggy, and nothing. But she took it. She just needed to grab onto something, and the blades of grass would just slip right through her fingers. So up to her shoulder is in, and now her head's going, and her legs, and her torso obviously followed before her legs, and her little toes were sticking up in the air, but there she was now, all inside this earth, all inside this this wellspring of water, right below her house. But was it below? Was it below her house? No, because then she remembered, she remembered her parents had taught her how to swim in a pond one summer. And she remembered she did the breaststroke, she did the crawl, she did the backstroke, anything she could do. And she realized there was a surface, and she was floating up to it. And it wasn't her backyard. She was in the middle of a lake, gorgeous lake. She looked up, and above her she could see these blue mountains. It was blue because the sun was setting and the light had left them. And the tops of the green trees were starting to have the darkness set in from twilight. But she could still see the sun on one side in between 2 mountains. It was beaming through, and it was reflecting on the water all around her. And here, everything was orange, and it was like the sun lit it all up. It was like the water was on fire. But it wasn't fire, it was peace. She pulled out her notebook and her pencil, expecting just a soggy old mess. Somehow this paper was perfect. Water repelled off of it. It was completely fine. And somehow the surface of the water became like a tabletop. She was able to wrest it open. She was treading water in that lake, and she had her pencil in hand and her journal open, and she was just writing everything that she saw, everything about the blue mountains and the orange sky and the water and the fire and the peace. And all around her was quiet. She never felt more alive. After she wrote 6 pages, usually she would try to write 3, but there are some days where there's so much inside of you, you have to write 6. And no, you cannot fill up a whole notebook. That's too much, and a person will get too overwhelmed, and then they'll never come back to the page, so you can't do that. But she wrote 6 pages. That's 3 sheets of paper, front and back. She took a breath and she looked up and she saw that the sun was almost gone. And now there were stars everywhere. It was almost like the sky was brighter at night than during the day, the amount of stars that were up there. It was magnificent. She floated on her back. You know how when you float on a lake, and sometimes you're tempted to do the backstroke, but you don't even really try. You just do like the softest lap of your arms, just to feel a little bit of movement underneath you. And she sat there with her hands behind her head, looking up at the sky, counting the stars and seeing if she could see constellations. She floated to the shore. She sat there with her notebook and her pencil on the sandy beach, a lake kind of beach, so it feels somewhere between sand and dirt, and then there's the grass right there and the reeds. She sat there, she took a breath, and she saw that there was a twig next to her. She held the twig in one hand and the pencil in the other hand, and she said, "I've been here before." It turns out your pencil is your instrument, and the tree helps you write. But the tree helps you write also because it tells you everything you need to say. She looked around one last time at those mountains and the trees and the stars, the lake and the shore, the grass and the reeds. And she said, "Okay, I know it's time to go home. I've had my quiet, and I know how to get here, and I think I know how to go home. If I need to come back here, I will. But tonight I'll go to bed, and it'll be quiet in my house too." So she took the twig and she started digging. Okay, so thanks for listening to my little story that I just made up right now. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I know it's a little different than what I've done in the series. I guess we'll call this the pre-season 2 special, something like that. I don't know. But, it's always nice to be back here with you, story folks, and to be back telling stories. I love hearing stories. I like all kinds, aside from a few. Mainly I don't love the ones that scare me, because life is scary enough, and I think especially right now. But I really enjoy your company, and I hope to see you back here next time. And that you have a great week, and that you stay safe, and that you be well. Take care.